Pretty cool, huh? Let's jump right into it. It's kind of dark. We're all kind of dark. We're all kind of light as well. And as we remember that, we give ourselves more and more permission to embody who we truly are. The resistance of an aspect of yourself or anything else you perceive in the world can point back to something you are rejecting or resisting within yourself. And in today's conversation, I imagine we're going to explore a bit more about embracing what you see both within you and around you with discernment, with clarity. Not so that you resist it or you try and change it or you feel disempowered by it, but rather so that you can simultaneously see clearly, tune within, and then take your now step with the most joy, the most, let's say, satisfaction, synchronicity possible to you right here and right now. Now, I'm Danielle Lynn. I am the herder of cats, speaker to alchemists such as yourself. And these conversations that I hold across different space dimensions and channels assist those who are remembering how to live their most intentional lives to live their most intentional lives. Go figure. We're very energy effective that way. And as mentioned in today's conversation, the exploration that we're holding up to the surface for all of us is where, let's say, the darkness might once have been pushed away, where we find the unlovable self. What is the unlovable self? You know, in many schools of thought, we could see this as the inner rejected child. Many of us who grew up through our lives have likely had an experience where we were rejected, shamed, or judged for being as we were, for maybe experimenting in this world, for expressing ourselves a certain way. And maybe we were told that the way we were being or acting was inappropriate, wrong, you should do this, you should do that. Now, perhaps it came from a place that was well-intentioned. Maybe not, but perhaps it did. Maybe it was a parent or a guardian that had care for you, and they thought that by telling you how you should be, they would assist you in avoiding pain down the road. We're not here to judge or blame the guardians. We're here to bring awareness of where the origins of some of these things that we internalize begin. Sometimes in being aware of the origins of a pattern, we have the ability to shift beyond the pattern, because then we're not, let's say, attempting to fix a pattern from the layer of the symptoms, but we get right to the core. We get right to the center of where it originated, so that we are able to then shift. Instead of having to change the whole thing, shift how the pattern is emanating so that new cycles can emerge. Now, I talk about this in a great deal, some of the other videos that I host and some of the other conversations that I have with you and me and me and you and all of we. But it is important, I feel, to highlight at this time, because many of us attempt to adjust our lives by being reactive to the things we're experiencing in the world around us, not just in our personal world, but let's just say to the perceived injustices that we observe in the greater stage of this reality. I'm going to speak on that a little bit as well. You see, it can be very easy to feel powerless in the scope of greater perceived movements happening in the world. We are actually quite intricately empowered. But I find that it takes a shift in perception with how you engage reality. Once again, I talk about this. It's not an ignoring of what's going on. But you're no longer deciding that what is going on is defining the parameters of what's possible and even probable for you or anyone else. Much of what's being pointed to in the videos by me, and perhaps some of the other books or some of the other places you're connecting, is sharing that the way that you may have been interacting with reality up until this point is just one facet, one surface of how you might experience things. And when we get so caught up in that particular experience, we sometimes convince ourselves the only way through is to fix or solve this particular step, when the answer may be, let's take a breather. Let's just let it be for a moment. And rather than trying to either suppress it or change it, let's just look at it. What happens when I look at it as it is without needing to change it? What I find what happens is we start being aware of the things that are not only, let's say, the challenge going on, but the space around the challenge and the space beyond the challenge. It would be like the equivalent of going down a road, finding a rock in your path, and you spend so much time figuring out how to move the rock. When you just give yourself enough space, you might start to realize, there's actually a path that goes here right around the rock. I actually don't have to move the rock. Some people wonder how this might translate into our greater, let's say, world social situations. I have pointed before that the way that this reality is created and co-created is through how we focus, and now not just individually but collectively. It's one of the reasons why your attention is so valuable, why billions and billions of dollars are spent on your attention. If you notice where the money flows, you might notice what is regarded as important or not. I invite people to look beyond the words and observe the energy and actions that are consistently being made or met. It can be a distraction to get caught up in what is right or wrong or this or that. We can simply observe what is happening without judging it for ourselves or others. Without needing to make others right or wrong, we can begin to get curious, and then we can apply that curiosity to our own lens and start to ask ourselves, if I was indeed that powerful, if I am indeed that powerful, and if I've just been that powerful playing a role where I was pretending I was not that powerful for a period of time, but now I'm remembering I'm that powerful. And if, as I apply my consistent focus in remembering I'm that powerful, and I understand that as I'm consistent with that, the world around me may appear to shift in extraordinary ways if I allow it, and I maybe don't grasp on the way it must look like, but I continue to discern and navigate by focusing my attention where I'd like to see the plants grow, water my garden in the place I'd like to see the plants grow, what might happen? If I have a history of pain and I feel a certain level of pain around the idea of focusing my energy elsewhere because it feels like a lot of effort, what might be the most simple yet effective step I can take in that direction? I would compare this to somebody who's doing physical therapy. Maybe it doesn't feel feasible to go running when you are feeling challenged walking, but how many steps might I take now? And then if I take that many steps every day, how might that build up? This is momentum. And the paradox is we simultaneously don't necessarily require momentum to shift in a quantum way, and yet at times building momentum is what creates the most easeful path to shift immediately. I'll say that another way. If you are so powerful that only what you perceive can be, let's say, true in reality can be, if it takes an enormous amount of belief energy for something to instantaneously happen, it may actually take less energy for it to take time and steps for something to happen than it would be for you to perceive it could instantaneously happen. And that's not a failing on your part. I will be very clear about that. It's not a failing on anyone's part. It could be seen as just part of the way that we currently play with reality. Now, that being said, if you choose to be more flexible in body, in mind, in spirit, in energy, you will likely find that as each new moment presents itself, you may find that it is more flexible for you to take what was once improbable leaps of possibility, and what might have once seemed as impossible is now becoming normal for you in reality. But you're not operating that way because you're attempting to escape the moment or prove that you're anything greater than you're not. You're simply moving that way because you remember that it is normal for you to move that way. Check out this cool rock again, if you like. Super cool, isn't it? This is an ammonite. Ancient fossil, but it's got crystallization in it. You see that? I love ammonites. They create a chamber, right? So this is a creature that once lived, and every time it grew, it created a new chamber to live in. So the ammonite itself actually lived in the chamber, and it lived in the most recent chamber. The rest of them were the previous chambers it had. So it was creating a new iteration, but it originated from the center point here. And in a very similar way, you could almost see our life cycles, our each moment as a new chamber, a new present moment we are living in that expands based on the point that we are operating from. Or you could just look at it as a cool fossil. Either way. Boy, howdy. We're going deep today. What have y'all been eating? Some more of that good soup, eh? All right, let's see what else would like to come forward right now. Living in the reality you want generally involves a deep embrace of where you're at right now, and anything that you once found unacceptable, unlovable. This is the place to start. Shifting those things from an external level only changes the face of the challenge that meets you. I'm going to say that a different way. If there is something you feel challenged by in your body, let's say the way you look, and you change that thing, let's say you get a surgery or you do some kind of shift, but you haven't actually addressed the core of that irritation you felt, then you might find when a new challenge pops up, let's say something happens with your hair, or you simply experience the beauty of aging, you may resist that as well. I have found in my own life, there were times that I deeply resisted my body. There were times I just did not like my body. And what I found was there was some form of deep self-rejection that was coming from that. I found that there was this yearning to not lose myself, like I was identifying my body with myself. And the aging or the fluctuation of my weight was reflecting to me something that felt out of my control. And what I have found is that there's a kind of beauty in embracing my ever-changing body as it shows up. It's almost like a living meditation. We get these beautiful bodies and they change constantly. They're constantly, cells are growing and dying, and we're shifting, and our hair grows and we change and we get older and all these things happen. And I found that there's this beautiful spot I can play in where I can lightly play with augmentations, such as the kinds of clothes I wear or how I do skincare or something like this, but without the added strain of feeling that I must control the way I look. See the middle path? It's neither a collapse or a rejection of self-care, but nor is it a tight hold on it. And in this way, I'm offered a pathway to live within the dance of constant change. And the same can be applied to anything beyond your body. It could be applied to your relationships, to your businesses, to the ways you make money, to the ways you live, to the places you live. My experience so far is no thing here lasts forever. The eternalness that we are is what exists beyond this dream dance of reality. And so in the meanwhile, we're just simply here to have the fun we're having as we're having it. How do you feel about that? I'd be curious to hear. You know, many of us who are drawn to this kind of material specifically, we sometimes get very immersed in self-improvement, whether it's spiritual or body or mental or emotional, and it's very inspiring. But I found for my own sanity and enjoyment, there's places we pause and understand that ultimately we live in eternal, imperfect perfection, perfect imperfection. There will always be something to grow, shift, improve, evolve, expand, which implies that there is never ultimately permanent perfection. And so I offer that to you because you have the opportunity to give that a rest if you like. And instead of approaching life and yourself as something to be constantly fixed or changed or improved upon or healed, it's more of simply a dance. And I'm doing this dance now, I'm doing this dance, I'm doing this expression now and this expression. Any judgment you can have about how well you are doing or not doing in life, if you are feeling, let's say, a right or wrongness about it, you have an opportunity right here and right now to give yourself a little bit of grace and lightness. If you were genuinely an eternal being who was simply playing in the blink of the eye of the cosmos, and everything you were doing right here, right now wouldn't matter in 100 years or 1,000 years or 1,000,000 years or 1,000,000,000,000 years, then what might you play with and create? Could you forgive yourself of the mistakes, the challenges you've made? Could you conceive that maybe forgiveness isn't even really needed, although you could give it to yourself if you wanted to? Could you imagine letting go of how anyone else needs to be and bring the full attention to yourself and how you get to operate, how you get to play? And even if you are in a co-creative way, that potentially by embodying the way to play, that will likely be more effective and inspiring to those who will join you than simply telling or prescribing to anyone else. Food for heart. And so with that, my friend, some final shares, some final thoughts for us. You really are a cool creature. Any of the hard things you've been going through right now, please understand that doesn't represent a failing on your part, and that you can be a fantastical creator and still have challenges. Both things can and often do happen simultaneously. If you like, let's take a breath in right now. Let's put our hands over our heart and let's just say, hey, thank you. Thank you for being the me that I am. It's all right. We got this. It's all right. I love you and appreciate you. My friend, if you think it'd be fun to explore some of the deeper things that we do when we're playing with reality, feel invited to check out my description link. I got some cool stuff for cool cats on there. And please feel invited to leave any comments, questions, shares. They're always very fun. And in all cases, continuing to imagine you with more and more clarity each day as you navigate and live your reality. Talk soon.